Okay, here we go. Here we go. Hello, everyone. We are here together. We are one. I am your host, Michelle.
I'm Barbara.
I'm Brenda.
And together we are one. We want to thank you for joining us. We're asking you to please share and invite others to come with us. This month of October, we're going to be talking about toxic relationship and what does that look like. We want you to know that Together We Are One is a women's talk show. It's not just for women. We talk about conversations that are real, raw, and transparent. We want to be able to educate, encourage, and empower and equip women through our own testimonies, right? We're not professionals, we're not therapists, but there's nothing better than sharing your own personal testimony and witnessing other situations. We are faith-based, we're not about religion, we are about a relationship with the Lord, but we do share a lot of our beliefs, right? A lot of our faith, because we know that we can't do anything without God. If it's not with Him, how can we even survive, right? So toxic relationship, what does that look like? It comes in many different forms. The last 3 months, we have talked about grief. We have talked about depression and now toxic relationships. And there's a lot of similarity in that. But we need to be able to express and share what does that look like, because some people might say, I'm depressed, but they may not realize that they're depressed because they're in a toxic relationship.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so toxic relationship is not just in a couple, it can also be in with family members, with co-workers, even with people at church. And I hate to say that, right, at the building, because it's someone who is the church doesn't have these kind of behaviors as a toxic person, right? And so I was thinking about earlier, what can I share and bring to the table about toxic relationships? And today we're going to kind of like go around and discuss it. But I remember once when I was young and I thought I knew it all, right? I was in my 25 years old and I was in a relationship, and it seemed to be that it was great. It was all fun, right? And then we got engaged, and then I noticed a toxic behavior in this person. And I'm like, what is happening here? Why all of a sudden this jealousy, this possessiveness, this control, manipulation? And I couldn't understand. But this toxic relationship, it became a toxic relationship. His toxic behavior he brought it into the relationship, and it became a toxic relationship. And I had never experienced anything like that before.
Mm-hmm.
But the toxicity was that his control and manipulation, again, this is all based on what we talk about: grief, depression, toxic relationships. It all stems from anger, resentment, bitterness, unforgiveness. All of these things happen. It comes from being traumatized from the things that we've gone through in life. Excuse me. So there's different things what causes and brings us to this toxic relationship. And for me, with this person, every time this person would act in a specific behavior, and I'd be like, you got to go. He'd be like, no. He'd start crying and being on his knees and saying, I'm sorry, please understand. I love you. Don't do this to me. And saying, I went through this and I saw my family go through this and I can't get it off my mind. And then I would feel bad, right? And say, okay, let me give him a chance.
Mm-hmm.
But it continued like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now that it was not a healthy relationship. It became so toxic that, and I know this is going to sound crazy. And I was telling my husband, I said, he would make me insane. To the point that one day, and this was before I was saved, okay? So you got to excuse me. I was young. I was not saved, but please understand. I lived in the 9th floor in a building in Hartford. He goes, if you leave me, I'm going to throw myself out the window. He would always control me and manipulate me. And I would always be like, don't do that, just go home with your family. He'd be like, no. So one day I was so irate with him that he said, if you leave me, I'm going to throw myself out the window. And my response was, go ahead, hurry up. I'll push you out. I just wanted him out.
Oh my goodness.
Because it had become so toxic.
Yeah.
He would go play with the knives in the kitchen.
Oh wow.
Like to try to instill fear in me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because his thought, he was afraid of me leaving, so, or kicking him out because it was my apartment. But his thought was, oh, what can I do to instill fear in her so that she doesn't leave me?
Right.
And for me, it was like, oh no, you gotta go, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because like the Hispanics say, "Ay bendito," oh, poor person, they've been through this, they've been
Mm-hmm.
through that. Let me try to have, empathy for them. I felt bad for him. He said no one loved him. I was the only person that loved him. Again, control, manipulation. I shared, after a few months of that, he had witnessed and experienced his brother being raped by a family member continuously. And he would tell me that, you know, this really traumatized him. Because I would say, you need therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you behaving like this with insecurity and don't leave me and you being possessive?
Mm-hmm.
And then after a few months, after we were completely broken, like done, he finally expressed and he testified that he too was a victim.
Mm.
So thank God, I did not stay in that relationship. However,
Mm-hmm.
we're not here to criticize. Please understand, we're not here to criticize anyone. We're not here to judge anyone. We're here to share the signs, the signals, right? That what are the things we need to be aware of?
Mm-hmm.
That also comes, again, the all of this stems by being raped, molested, being rejected, being traumatized. We have discussed all of these. Every month we have a different subject. And so it's important for us to be able to acknowledge that there's something going wrong, right? That there's something that is not right. And also to be able to say, okay, this is what it is.
Mhm.
This is toxic, it's not healthy. How is this? But listen, if you are in a relationship, whatever relationship it is, if you're not if you don't have peace, if you don't have joy, if you're continuously depressed, down, if you're upset, if you feel like bitter, like you can't move forward, nothing is changing in your life, there's a root issue there. Whether it's toxic, whether it's depression, whether it's grief, whether it's trauma, you need to make sure that you get help. And so we're sharing the different forms of toxic relationships that we've been in, because there are some toxic relationships with parents, right?
Yep.
With grandparents, with siblings. They're not healthy. And so sometimes I have had to learn, right,
Mm-hmm.
that this relationship is not healthy. I may love you, but I'm going to have to love you from afar because I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time I'm around you, it causes me to feel a certain way. And I can start feeling my body just really get tense.
Mhm.
And then my body starts to be in pain. And my whole body goes through all these emotions
Right.
when I'm around people that are toxic, people that like to gossip a lot, right? People that are always judging and complaining. For immediately my body gets tense and I start getting in pain, and I don't want to be around that atmosphere.
Mhm.
Or people that are yelling, or people that are swearing, that get really crazy. I was around that growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm at a point in my life now. I don't want that drama in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to live in peace.
Right.
I'm not saying I have the perfect life, because to God be the glory. None of us are perfect, but I do strive to have a life, a home where God is centered in our home, where we have peace, where we have joy, and where we have love, right? Because you get to a point in your life that you're like, I don't want to live like this anymore.
Mhm.
I want to have peace. I want to have love. I want to have joy. Whatever it takes, get me away from everything else that is not like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was for me one of the toxic relationships that I experienced when it came to being with someone else. Yes, I was in other unhealthy relationships, but that one for me was a toxic relationship,
Mm-hmm.
because there's unhealthy,
Right.
and then there's toxic. Like what's the balance? Like what is the difference between unhealthy and toxic? I'll ask you, Brenda. What do you think?
I think I don't know. It's Like with toxic, I see it as I learned from what I've learned.
Right.
It's when you are being abused verbally, emotionally, mentally, and physically. Like you said, you don't have no peace, no joy, and you lose yourself in those type of relationships because of this person who is controlling, manipulative, deceiving, whether it's a parent, a boyfriend, whoever it is.
And it can even be a child.
And child too, because children, learn from
Right.
other people's behaviors and they become controlling and entitled, where they're trying to intimidate the parent to get their way. So
Right.
that child even becomes toxic too.
Mhm.
So
And then now they keep on the same sick cycle.
Right.
The bleeding continues. Like I have a very special young girl. She goes. She told the parent, "Don't come here and vomit on me. I have peace. Don't come give me your vomit.
Right.
Throw your vomit on me." Meaning the attitude, the toxic, the swearing. And I said, "That's a good one. I'm gonna use that." So whenever if my husband, I said, "No, don't come vomit on me now. I have peace. I have the joy of the Lord. I don't want any of that." But and then there's unhealthy. Unhealthy for me, I think, is okay, you're not happy, you're not communicating,
Right.
but there's not that abuse, mentally, physically, emotionally, where they're just continuously
Right.
on you.
Right.
Would you like to share any of any toxic experience that you have had that you can think of, and how did it help you move out of that? For me, let me just share. For me to get out of that relationship, what did it for me was when, and that's why we have to be careful, right? Because there was the manipulating with the knives, and then there was like, oh, I'm gonna kill myself, right? And then I said, I need you to leave. I just want to have peace, right? And he came and he tackled me like for football. And I saw his face. I know it wasn't him. I know it was a demon from hell through him. And I forgave him, But my point to this is when he tackled me and I literally flew and hit my head and my back into the shower. And so no one has ever laid hands on me besides the people in church except for this man. So when that happened, I was like, okay, that's it. I called this uncle. I told him what happened. His uncle was a police officer. I said, please come pick him up or I'm going to have him arrested here. And he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Forgive me. He's crying. And I'm like, no, that's not working. No, you got to go. Because we can't let it get to that point. We can't let it get to that point where it's now becoming painful, right? And I need you to excuse me. But Brenda, can you share with us? Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think for me, like, and the enemy knows how to use people to bring toxicity around you. For me, it's all been like the same pattern of people where they're very covert in the way that they will be toxic, where I wouldn't see it at first.
Right.
But it wasn't, until God started showing me these signs that I kind of came to realize what covert manipulation and control looked like. But as I got more, intimate with the Lord, I would sense this intimidation come over me when the person was toxic. And that I would feel like intimidated and fearful around that person. Like they had so much more power than me. So that's when I started to like kind of ask God, like, why do I feel intimidated when this person's around? Like, I don't understand. Me being a people pleaser, I would do everything to please those around me, no matter how toxic they were, because I just wanted approval in all the wrong ways. But yeah, like just sensing the intimidation at first and just understanding, like, I'm like, why am I so fearful around this person? She's just, these people are just regular people, like human beings, just like me. So I don't understand why I would feel like that around them. And it's just the fact that God was trying to show me, you're not standing in your authority and in the value that I have given you as my daughter. And you're allowing man to pretty much, intimidate you and bring fear because you're not valuing yourself enough. So that's how I started to kind of notice what toxic people look like. Because with intimidation, God started showing me how they were being controlling, how they were being deceptive and stuff like that. So, thankful that I prayed about it and God kind of put me through a process of removing these people from my life. They're still around, but like you said, you have to love them from afar,
Right.
and pray for them, and just still be respectful and honor the people, but knowing that God really had to show me my worth and say, why fear man? I'm the one that you have to reverentially fear. It's not them. Whatever you're sensing is the spirit that they're carrying,
Right.
the stronghold that they're carrying. That's what you're sensing. That's what you're discerning. So that gave me also motivation to pray for that person regarding what they were carrying too, because it's toxic, that they don't know that the enemy is using them to be controlling and to be deceptive. So God had to remove me from being around them so much, but now from far away, when I see them or I talk to them, I'm able to be like, okay, hi, and just be very cordial and stuff like that. But it's
so imagine how we feel, right, when we're dealing with toxic people. Imagine how they are feeling internally,
right.
How tormented they are by this spirit of toxic or stronghold, whatever you want to call it, right? This attitude, whatever you want to call it, whatever your belief is. Because what would cause this person to behave in such way? Was it that they witnessed this and they thought that this is okay behavior? Is this the norm? Because I know of other people that they're adults and they have this toxic kind of personality, and this is all their children have seen. So in the eyes of their children, this is normal, and it's not normal, and it's not okay.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a toxic behavior.
I think with the controlling part, because from what I've seen, what God has shown me in certain people is that they put up all these walls because of hurt, like you said, abuse in the past. So they feel that if they could control people, that nobody can hurt them, and they have these defense mechanisms up and all these walls up that give them that power and that control to keep people out from hurting them. So,
what's really sad? I know of, I've known and I've witnessed, and this dog cannot make up her mind today. Toxic relationships in couples. I know a couple, they've been married, divorced, married, and it's still toxic. It's all about control, about manipulation. What makes you go back to a person that is so toxic, that treats you so wrong, so unhealthy, right? We need to cut that umbilical cord, whatever it is, that insecurity. We need to walk away from it. We cannot continue to be involved in that kind of relationship, because what are we teaching the world? And then in front of the people, we're like, we're great, we're good. So are they really the issue, or do we have an issue too?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Right? Is it because that person's all toxic, or am I also toxic because I continue to go back to that?
Right.
Are we toxic together? I mean, some people rather be toxic together than being away from it.
And that peace.
Right.
Because they don't know anything better than that.
Right. That's all they've known.
Know what they ended up learning. It's like a response to what they consider normal. They normalize that behavior.
Right. How about you, Barbara? Tell us about you.
Kind of like what Brenda was saying. Like, I've seen a lot of different relationships throughout my early, like into my teenage and early adulthood, and like throughout my adulthood. I'm not, but anyways, it's been one of those things that when I reflect back on where that stemmed from, kind of like what you were talking about, like, where do you go back? And you go back into time where you didn't allow yourself to stand up for yourself, or to show up for yourself, or to understand your worth and know your worth. So the relationships that I've had, that I've had to like really step away from for many reasons is because I failed to show up for myself, showing up for them.
Say that again.
I failed to show up for myself, showing up for them.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do that, we take away our power and authority
Mm-hmm.
and give it to them.
Right.
And what they see is a vulnerable side of you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That your kindness and your willingness to kind of like settle things, you know, they see that as an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
They're
And a
not-
weakness, right?
Yeah,
Would
and
you
a
say?
weakness. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And they capitalize on your kindness and weakness. Like they see, oh, you know, maybe she'll let me this time around. And I'm the type of person that I give people the benefit of the doubt. But that really
Mm-hmm.
was what put up a lot of setbacks for myself in terms of growing and evolving into like being more confident in myself, knowing my worth, and really showing up for myself in those relationships in an empowered way. So I dealt with, you know, the manipulation
Mm-hmm.
and the covertness and just the way that the controlling aspect of how people would want to just use that
Mm-hmm.
and kind of dictate what the outcome is. I realized that they want that control so much more than they want peace.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm all set. I don't need to
Mhm.
feel like I'm in control. When I have the value and the work that I have had to like really like almost like work towards with God,
Mhm.
because I was one of those people that I was a doormat.
Mm.
I was a doormat, and I was a doormat too in really close relationships, and even in
Family.
family
Would you say?
relationships,
Right.
and even with between my husband and myself. And like you said, there's unhealthy and there's toxic. So what do you do when you're in that situation? Do you walk away from the toxicity or stay in the toxicity? Or do you stay in a relationship that you both see that you're both like can have toxic
Right.
patterns,
Mm-hmm.
and then you also have that accountability.
Mm-hmm.
So there's certain things that are worth your time and effort,
Right.
and then there's things that are not even worth your time and energy.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had to learn that some people will not get that sense of energy and power and authority, because I have walked away from that situation because I've had to show my dignity and say, this stops here. I draw the line here.
Right.
This is not okay. And in trying to resolve things, there's times when you're going to end up not having any type of resolution. You have to be okay with no closure.
With not being okay.
Yeah,
Right.
you're going to have to face those times and relationships where there was no closure and you had to sweep things under the rug. But you leave with a sense of dignity and respect for yourself and self-worth, because you know at the end of the day, you know that you did everything you could in that relationship to at least be, you know, mature enough to have a conversation, yet the person doesn't want to realize that they're also being toxic.
Right.
And like you said, there's that when you're in a toxic relationship, you also tend to, because the person is like
Continuously attacking you.
either that or like they're like baiting you,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
okay, like in certain situations or conversations or whatever, and but then you also are doing that same
You
toxic dance,
become like them.
and you become like them,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and then you're like, okay, then you really have to realize,
What am I doing?
what am I doing that's continuing this? you're doing something that also engages that relationship.
Mhm.
So when you realize that, and you have the you almost, it's like you're self-reflecting on yourself, and if you can be honest with yourself and you can admit where you're wrong,
Mhm.
that's where you know you're gonna move forward and be like, you know what, I'm a little bit toxic too,
Right.
and admit when you're wrong, and you know what, and at least you know that you have, that person is not gonna have that power over you, because
Right.
you know that you are genuine. You come to do things like in terms of wanting to resolve things.
Mhm.
And when you also exhibit those types of behaviors like them, at least if you acknowledge and you try to change, then the responsibility is on you. It's all what you do for yourself.
Mhm.
Because if you want people to reflect what you want, you also have to do the same.
Right.
It can't just be like, you can't expect people to be like you.
And I think
You know?
for me, what drew the line was like, what am I doing?
Mhm.
What I'm becoming like him.
Yeah.
Like what? This is not me. This is not what I was brought up in. This is not what my parents didn't raise me to allow this.
Right.
And so, I as we're speaking, I remember as younger, I was involved in some toxic relationship with friends because I wanted to fit in. I wanted them to like me.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And then when I realized after a while, I don't want to be like, I don't want to be like them. They're toxic. They're mean. They talk about people. They gossip about everybody. They're judging, criticizing, and just being plain mean.
Mhm.
And those are toxic relationships that it's a bait that you start behaving like this,
Mm-hmm.
and your mind starts thinking like them, and that is so dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
That is so dangerous because now you're bringing that home.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll bring it into your marriage, you're bringing it with your children. There are some relationships that are very toxic between parents and children.
Yes.
Parents are very controlling, very manipulative. I'm the parent, you do what I say, and the parent is very toxic.
Mhm.
And so now the child becomes very toxic,
Mhm.
full of anger, full of resentment, full of bitterness, full of control and manipulation. They start talking to other people in the same way. And then the funny thing is, the parent can see in the child and the child can see in the parent, but they can't see it in themselves.
Right.
Mhm.
Right?
And that's where you have to really like do your due diligence, the work for yourself, within yourself, to realize that you also are not, you're also engaging in that negative behavior. You have to do something about it.
So what happens when you don't realize that you're stuck in a toxic relationship and or that you yourself are toxic?
You start to justify your behavior. That's what happens.
Okay, let me ask again. What happens if we become toxic, or we are in a toxic relationship, but we don't realize that it's toxic because we have lived it for so long, we have gotten so caught up into it that we just think that this is the norm, that something's wrong with me, that they're not the problem. Right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's happened too. I've
So
seen that.
what can we tell the audience if you realize XYZ is happening, or that you're feeling this and that, then this is part of being toxic,
Mm-hmm.
or part of being victim from someone who's very toxic in your relationship. If you're feeling, okay, thank you, Lord. If you're feeling anxiety, if you're feeling like you're not worth anything,
Mm-hmm.
that if you're feeling and believing the lie that you're the problem,
Right.
and you might be the problem, nobody's saying that you're not,
Right.
but that it's always on you because
Yes.
that person always telling you you're the problem, you need help, nothing is wrong
Right.
with me.
Right.
If you're feeling hopeless,
Mm-hmm.
you have insomnia, you are feeling of wanting to commit suicide. Again, we've talked about these things.
You lose sleep. You can lose
right,
sleep.
insomnia,
like, yeah.
right. We've talked about this when it comes to rejection, when it comes to trauma, depression, grief, and now we're talking about it there's a reason. I really believe, because these are subjects that the Lord gave me.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a reason for all of this, because we may identify, I'm depressed, but I'm not in a toxic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, you're depressed because you are in a toxic relationship,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or I'm grieving and I can't get up because I'm depressed. Well, maybe you're grieving, you can't get up because maybe you are in a toxic relationship.
Right.
How do we identify a toxic relationship?
That's tough. I think it's hard when you're in it,
Right.
but once you know that you've started to like not recognize who you are, kind of like what you were saying earlier, and you start to like question things and like your reality or how things are going. I think when you start doing that and you're kind of like, wait a minute, I think little by little the fog has lifted, and just enough for you to be like, I'm aware that this is happening and I'm not in a good place. And then I would advise that you talk to somebody, go to therapy, do something that will allow you to continue to have that clarity. Because a lot of times what happens, like what you were saying, is like you get sucked into a relationship and it's like you're in the fog, and the veil has to be lifted in order for you to see a lot clearer. And once you're there, just enough that you see like where you kind of taste a little bit of peace without that person,
Right.
it's like, okay, what the heck? Why was I staying here? And that's your cue to be like, you can walk away. You can reconcile within yourself that that person's never going to change. And it wasn't ultimately you that decided that the relationship had to end or that it's your fault. You don't have to feel like you ended that relationship because you wanted to. It's almost like you have to give yourself permission and discern that, this was never a good thing, and that it wasn't always that it was my fault. Like, it was because I was in this toxic relationship that those behaviors manifested, because you're in a fog.
Let me ask you something, both of you.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever experienced that you're in this fog and you're in toxic relationships, but you see everyone else being peaceful, being happy, being like living life? Do you feel like something's wrong with me? Or do you think that that would be a good sign, like something's not right, let me get some help? Or do you feel like that's never going to happen to me?
I don't know. For me, I didn't really. I mean, I would see people in relationships, married happily and stuff like that. But like she said, because I'm in a fog, I didn't see anything wrong with the relationships that I was in until the light came on, and the light had to come on when everything started to fall apart in my life. So for me, God had to get my attention by allowing everything to fall apart.
Right.
So that's when the light came on. And that's when I had to really become self-aware, because there's not enough self-awareness nowadays.
Yeah.
I had to become very self-aware of why I was allowing certain behaviors to manifest, like you said, in the relationships or with this person or that person.
Or that you put up with.
Right. So God had to deal with me first so that the puzzle pieces can come together as to why I was in a toxic relationship. Because I had my own toxic things about me, which was rejection, abandonment, not knowing my self-worth.
Right.
Those things was feeding the toxic relationship. So.
Did you witness trauma? I mean, did you witness toxic relationship as a child? Toxic behavior around your surroundings?
Yeah. Growing up, you're around, especially in my family's household, there was always, a lot of people and friends were always around. So you would see the different toxic relationships and the different people that were around you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and sometimes these toxic behaviors are generational behaviors that just keep getting passed down.
Yeah.
For me, I realized, growing up, as much as we had fun and as much as, there were seasons that, we had a lot of family gatherings. But as I got older and I was a teenager, to be able to distinguish, right? Because when you're young, we can't articulate what is toxic,
Right.
what is not,
Right.
what is unhealthy, what is not.
Right.
But for me, I realized, like, this is not this pattern of the way men treat women, the way men treat the wives,
Mm-hmm.
the way men treat their daughters. They have to be home, and the boys can do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. That's a toxic behavior. Having the men, beat on the women, cheat on the women, lie on the women. It's okay for you to go drink and party and come home after you've done your garbage out there, come home and sleep with your wife. Like, there's a lot of toxic behavior. And then you see it in the next generation, and it's so, like, nonchalant. Like, this toxic stuff just keeps on rolling down. And even we ourselves, we pick some of those bad toxic habits, and we don't realize, wait a minute, this is not normal. This is not okay. No, I'm not gonna allow this to happen in my life. I remember growing up, I'd be like, I am never gonna allow this to happen in my life. I will never put up with this. I will never put up with that. And I ended up in a relationship putting up with it. Why? If I was already, in my mind, I'm not going through that. But because I'm feeling bad for this person, nobody loves them. You're the only one that can love them. You're the only one that can help them, because you think that you're God and that you can make things better. No, we're not God.
And
There's
we're
only
not
one
heroes.
God.
We're not heroes.
And we should not be a punching bag.
Yeah.
We should not allow people to control and manipulate us, make us do things we don't want to do. That's so unhealthy. I had a friend in high school, and she got involved in a relationship that was extremely toxic. He was a gang member. He had her do drugs because he was a drug dealer. He had her sleep with other people to sell herself to get money.
Yeah.
He had her drive the car while he would be stealing the houses, and she ends up in prison. Talk about toxic.
Wow.
So in her life growing up, right, and she was a beautiful, smart young girl. But in her life growing up, she saw her father abuse her mother, this way, and the mother drank a lot. So that was a toxic behavior. So she fell right into it. And then so much more worse, right? Because now she's in prison, she's doing drugs, she's sleeping, doing things because he is manipulating her. That's not love. Let's just put it out there. That's not love. Again, there's unhealthy relationship, and then there's toxic relationships. Either way, get help. Either way, seek counseling. Either way, surround yourself with people that really care about you, that are going to love you without judging you, because this is not about judging or condemning anyone. None of us are perfect. We all go through our trials and tribulations. Our hope is that through this talk show, you are able to, that a bell will go off and be like, wait a minute, that sounds familiar. That sounds like some of my patterns, my habits. Am I being the person that is controlling and manipulating? Am I being the one controlling, manipulating? Have I become like that without realizing it? We want to be able to cut those umbilical cords, because it's not healthy. Another subject, I was reading and doing some stuff. How do you talk to your child when you notice that now there's some pattern behaviors in them with their boyfriend or girlfriend? How do you forewarn them, this is toxic, right? Because they're going to tell us, oh, I love them, they just love me, that's why they're behaving like this, I made them mad. And the parent is saying, no, that's not healthy, it's toxic. How do you tell your child with love? And I posted on something on Together We Are One, because there are parents that if you see a child that was very happy before, very full of life, and all of a sudden they're in a relationship and they can only be with that person, they're no longer with their friends, that person is controlling and picking them up and manipulating them.
They're like a shell of themselves.
Yes. Please get them help. Don't allow them. Don't ignore it. Don't like sweep it away.
Mm-hmm.
Speak to them, get them counseling. Because what ends up happening is they run away because now the parent is the bad one, right? And then they get beaten. Then things happen like what happened to my friend, right? And we don't want those things to happen to our children. We don't want the toxic relationships to happen. And at some point we have to say to ourselves, I am not allowing this. You're not going to speak to me like this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I am, you need to respect me. You need to love me. And I'll say, to God be the glory. Even with my marriage, my husband now, at the beginning, it was very toxic.
Yeah.
And had a lot of patience, had a lot of, the Lord had told me this was my husband, and I married him out of obedience to God. But there was a lot of toxic patterns there that were brought in, right? And so my husband had these patterns, and I started becoming like him because I was like, I'm not putting up with this. I'm not going to allow you to talk to me like this, so I'm going to give it right back to you. And I became toxic. And God had to deal with me. And then God is like, no, you will not have this behavior. This is not who you are. Right. This is what the word of God says. This is what love is. It's kind, it's gentle, it's patient, it's peaceful, it's not boastful, not selfish, not easily angered, right? And when God brought me to those scriptures, God really had to deal with me because I had become like something that I despised.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really hard. It's hard to acknowledge that, oh my God, I'm just as bad, if not worse, because I'm supposed to be the godly one, the humble one, the loving one, and I have now become like this toxic. And then my daughter was watching this behavior, right? And so now then she went through a relationship, the same thing. And again, at some point you got to be like, no, God, take this away from me. Whatever you have to do in me, do it. Change my way of praying, change my way of thinking.
Yeah.
Whatever you need to do in me, do it.
Right.
Because I don't want to. But one of the things I did start doing a lot was like, you will not speak to me like that anymore. I am, you need to love me and you need to respect me. And he would try to be like, no, you will not speak to me like that. And I kept
authority.
Right. And I kept saying, no, you will not speak to me like that. No, you will not do this to me. No. And I was like, no. At some point, it's like I'm sorry to use this analogy, but with a dog, you have to train them, right? And you tell the dog, no. And they have to be like, nope, they can't do it, right? And it's not that we want to compare them to dogs, but at some point, we have to stand in authority and be like, no, I'm not dealing with this demon spirit. I know it's not you. Right. It's the stronghold through you. Right. Yet, we're not doing this.
Right.
We're not doing this. If you're not going to choose to get some help, then we're going to have to just not do this anymore because it's not healthy. You lose your identity, you lose yourself, you lose emotions, you become numb.
Yeah, that can happen.
You become really numb. And I know for me, there was a season in my life that I became very numb. And I knew that the Lord loved me and I loved the Lord and I kept going as the Lord directed me, but I had lost my joy. And it was because I was so consumed by the toxic behaviors in the relationship. And it's not okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. And we want to make sure that you get some help and that, again, look in the mirror and say, what do you see? Do you see peace? Do you see joy? Do you see love? Or do you see abuse? Do you see someone not worthy? Or do you see, no, I'm not, this is not for me. I'm worth more than this. You can no longer look in the mirror. I advise you to look in the mirror because a lot of times it's so hard for us to look in the mirror. We go bypass it. But then when we look deep in our soul, in our spirit, and through the eyes, we're like, who are you? Who are you? What have you done with Michelle? Or what have you done with, who I created you to be? This is not healthy. It's not what I want for you. And so how do you get out of that toxic relationship? Because it happens with parents too. Are Our parents, there are parents, not, I won't say our parents, there are parents that control and manipulate the mother, control and manipulate the children. And then they tell you the mother's the one that's crazy. And then next thing you see, the children are calling the mother crazy. It's toxic. It's not healthy.
I think that's harder when it's parents because, how do you detach when
Right.
you're so,
Yeah.
God, you come out of your mother's womb and it's like you have that bond.
Yeah.
But when the parent is being so toxic, it's like it's hard to detach because this is your mother or your
Right.
father. Like how do you let go?
Right.
And I know a couple people that just completely just move away and they don't even talk to their parents anymore because they're so toxic.
Right.
But it's hard on those who really, especially love their parents, no matter how toxic they are. They
Right.
don't want to separate. So
Yeah.
And that is very hard. I
Mhm.
know that, I've also known a lot of people that, even grandparents, and not to bring this up, but we are people that practice witchcraft. They're
Mhm.
very toxic, very controlling, very manipulating,
Mhm.
and very toxic to your soul, to your spirit, to your everything about you.
Mhm.
And how do you cut away from that?
Right.
They're my grandmother, but they're my mother, but they're my aunt, but they love me, but they raised me, but they helped me.
Mm-hmm.
But they went through so much, so it's
Right.
almost like
Right.
It's almost like you put so much like so much weight on the relationship, the ties, the fact that they're family, the fact that they're your parent, or they're they're in your inner circle, and you're supposed to.
And I think biblically, we have to honor our parents, because
Right.
the Bible tells us to that
yes,
too.
but I realize a lot of times too that becomes a weapon
Mhm.
Yeah.
used against us
Mm-hmm.
because we're supposed to be this, because we're supposed to, and yes, we should be that way, but there's certain things that God calls for us to do, to sever
Mhm.
for our own peace.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And you have to be like, no, I don't care if it's my mom, my dad, this one, fulana. No, it stops here.
Mhm.
Because as much as you feel like you're indebted to them, you don't owe them anything.
Right.
They if they're placing such a burden on your heart and your spirit, where you feel like you're shrinking yourself in order to accommodate them, that is not
They
fruitful.
become an idol.
Yeah.
They
And
become an idol.
and that's not a fruitful relationship.
Right.
There's no fruit there to bear.
Right.
And not only that, but we also have to have discernment when it comes to the word of God. And we need to seek God. The word of God says seek God's kingdom first. It doesn't say seek your mother and your father first.
No.
Right.
It says honor your mother and your father.
Right.
How do you honor your mother and your father? You respect them, you
Mhm.
love them, you help them when needed, but there are some parents that we need to keep ourselves away from them
Mhm.
because they're toxic, they're abusive, they're controlling, they're manipulated, so we need to use discernment, and we
Yeah.
need to bring it to God, because God does not want us. What if your parent says, here, take this knife and go kill that person because I don't like them? Are you going to be like, okay, let me honor you? Bam. No. So I know that that's not we're not going to that depth, but if our parents are not bringing joy into our life, like God brings us joy, He brings us peace, He brings us love. That is our main father, period.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because although we came through our mother, we came from God.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And God's the one that knit us in our mother. God is the one that supplies our needs, that
Right.
He's our way maker. He's our miracle worker. He's the one that says, I will never leave you and I will never forsake
Right.
you. Everywhere in the Bible. And you can go anywhere in the Bible. It says, the Lord will protect you. The Lord will provide for you. The Lord has a plan for you. The Lord promise will prevail. The Lord loves you. Nowhere it says go to your father, go to your mother.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
He didn't tell King David when he was hiding in the cave, your mother and your father made you king. No, I did.
Mhm.
He didn't tell Joseph when he was in the prison, your mother and your father made you second in command. No, I did. It's all God.
Mhm.
So yes, we are to honor our father and mother, but remember, we want to be careful, because if they are doing evil,
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to honor that.
No,
We are not going to honor evil.
Mm-mm.
We're not going to honor control and manipulation. We are not going to honor toxic,
Mhm.
because we belong to one, and that is God.
Mhm.
And yes, He will give us a mother and a father in the natural, right? But we are to learn from that. If they're hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. If they're naked, give them, clothing.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we honor.
Mm-hmm.
We respect them. Don't judge them.
Mhm.
Don't, curse at them. If they need our help, yes, we want to be there. But are they our God? Absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not. So we want to honor them by loving on them, praying for them. And a lot of times people don't have a good relationship with their family, with their parents, with their siblings, right? But we pray for them, because when we're around them, the words that come out of their mouth are very toxic. You don't want to be around that, because it brings you down. It makes you feel a certain way.
Right.
So a lot of times we have to love our loved ones from afar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because the word does say love your enemies. It says to pray for them, to
Right.
feed them and clothe them.
Right.
So we want to honor God. God is our number one father. And respect them, but that doesn't mean stay there and put up with them.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That doesn't mean allow them to curse you out, or allow them to use you and abuse you for whatever you can help them with money. Oh, I need money. I raised you. I did this for you. Well, excuse me. God is the one that used them to help you. God is the one that gave them life and health and a job. So it was really God through them.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody loves you, they wouldn't be using those kind of words.
No,
Mhm.
and they wouldn't use that against you to guilt trip you into
Mhm.
staying. Period.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we want to thank you for joining us. Ladies, do you have anything else you want to share that you can think of?
I was thinking, just like what you were saying, I feel like oftentimes when we're trying to figure out what's going on with the dynamics, we try to think that we could change others, but if we don't see that we have to change ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
then we're blind to our own, our own, like faults and shortcomings. Like we're
Right.
blind. It's like that the log in the other person's eye.
Mm-hmm.
You try
The
to
speck.
take it out.
The speck. Yeah.
Yeah, the speck in somebody's eye.
And you have a plank. You have
And
one
you have
bigger.
a big plank. We spoke about that last week. But you have to look. You have to step back.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look within and say, you know what? I'm not gonna try to change that person.
Right.
God, that's God's job.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? That's not my assignment anymore. I put it down. I lay it down at God's feet. And you know what? I'm gonna work on what I can control on, which is myself.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Myself and whatever God can offer me in terms of what areas am I weak on that I need to strengthen, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of times it's identity.
Right.
Like when I think of families excusing each other's behaviors
Right.
or other family members' behaviors, it all has to do with the identity that you stand on.
Mhm.
And if you don't stand in the confidence of your identity in Christ, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's going to be that much harder for you to really pull yourself together and realize that you yourself are worth
Right.
all the peace and the joy and the dignity and the respect that you deserve.
Right.
Like you deserve that.
Right.
So when you don't stand in that, it's like you're not standing on solid ground.
Right.
So if you
Sinking sand.
if you identify your identity is in Christ, you're not gonna fall to those manipulative things that people do. You just will stand in your identity.
So what would you tell our audience? And then Brenda, I want to hear from you. What would you tell them if they find themselves in this situation?
I would say that I would definitely look within and try to, create a healing journey for yourself, because you have to heal what's within
Mhm.
before you deal with everything
Right.
else. heal and deal with yourself before you try to extend and offer that to others, because you yourself are the only person that can control what's happening in your life, you yourself.
Right.
So do that
Through
Look-
Christ Jesus in you. Yeah.
exactly, and seek for counseling, therapy. Maybe because you've lost yourself. Maybe the activities that you used to do, seek those things out.
Do things that you used to like.
Yeah.
Especially if they're telling you you can't hang out with your friends, you can't do this anymore, you can't do that. That's toxic. That is
Yeah.
just pain, venom,
Yeah.
poison.
Right.
Brenda, what about you? Because I know that you're big on reading and doing research. What would you tell them?
Yeah. To add what to Barbara said, get alone sometimes. Because especially when you're around a lot of people, distractions and stuff, try to find some time just for yourself.
Yes.
Where you can actually sit back and journal or read and self-reflect.
Yeah.
And that way you can start just evaluating yourself and what's going on around you, so that hopefully things start to kind of
The
turn
bubble go on.
like,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Well, ladies, thank you for coming. I am Michelle.
I'm Barbara.
I'm Brenda.
And together we are one.
Together.
We want to thank you for joining us. Please share and invite. Next week we will not be here. It's my dad's birthday. We're going to celebrate as a whole and with family, but we'll be here the following week. We have a few events coming up. Well, Light of Hope Ministries is, and you know that I have Light of Hope Ministries and Together We Are One. So we're having a couples event. We're having a couples forum retreat, a one-day retreat. That's going to be on Saturday, November 6th. It's going to be Marriage on the Rocks. So if you're married or you're engaged or you're living with someone and the intention is to get married, I would highly suggest that you join us. It's going to be really good. It has a lot of great information. There is a price for it. There's going to be breakfast, a lunch, and all the material that is needed that you'll get to take home with you. And so you can review, go over it, so that you can have your marriage will be based on the rock. And we know that God is the rock, on a solid rock. But many times our marriage is crumbling and we don't understand. So I know it's going to be a blessing to you. I know that it was a blessing for me. That's going to be on Saturday, November 6th. I believe we're going to have another Thanksgiving soiree on Saturday, November 27th. And we'll have more information about all of this. But I'm just giving you some dates so that you can kind of put on your calendar. That's going to be for the marriage couple. It's going to be Saturday, November 6th. For the Thanksgiving soiree, is going to be Saturday, November 27th. And then I believe we're going to have a workshop for women. And that's going to be, I believe, on December 11th. That's going to be from 10 in the morning to 2. Our soiree is going to be from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Our marriage event couple forum is going to be from 9 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. I'm going to be posting all of that, but I'm just letting you know ahead of time so you can put the dates. November 10th, November 6th, the 27th, and December 11th. Thank you for joining me. Have a fabulous weekend. We pray you have a great week next week. And remember, if you find yourself in a toxic relationship, if anything that we have said here has resonated within you, say, wait a minute, that sounds like me or this other person. Let me look in the mirror and let me ask me some questions. Am I happy? Do I have peace? Can I sleep? Am I anxious? Am I worried? Am I afraid? Am I depressed? Is this person, loving on me and respecting me, treating me the way I would like to be treated? Get some help. Don't do this alone. It's important that you unite with people that are like-minded, that are positive, that have experience. Don't go to someone who's broke, jacked up, and has a whole horrible relationship with other people for advice. Go to someone who's full of light, full of love, that is positive, and that can really direct your steps in the way to go. Have a good night, and God bless you. Bye-bye.